I'm sure he's around. All right. Well, it's time. So let's go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this tiny little CALEXT session in a room that's slightly too big for us, but I think this might be the smallest room they had. Anyway, thanks, Daniel, with the giant head that's bigger than mine on the wall over there. You look huge. They've got a huge screen for you. Maximum smile. I put together some very, very short slides here. Basically, welcome. This is CALEXT. If this is where you want to be, good. This is the note well. All of this applies to everything you do this week at IETF, whether you're in the room or remotely. I'm sure you have read it. If not, please do, and obey all the instructions therein. This is the agenda that I put together based on what people have asked for. So we don't need to stick to this, but this is the guide for what we want to look at. Has Mike appeared in the queue? He has not. So subscription upgrade is Mike's document. It is in last call. But it turns out, hello, Mike, welcome. Just talking about subscription upgrade, which is in last call. You're the author on it. It has a section in it which is still outstanding questions that have. Am I not loud enough? I feel really loud. Thank you. Yeah, outstanding questions that are not yet resolved in there, which probably should be sorted out before we send it to ASG, or they will ask me questions about my shepherding skills. So what do you want to do about that? Do you want to pop in the queue, Mike? Can you hear us?
I only caught the tail end of what you were saying. What was it?
So the subscription upgrade document is sitting there. It's gone through last call. No comments on it, but it has outstanding questions to be resolved. And so when I went to write the shepherd's statement,
Yes.
I was like, yeah, he's going to have some questions for me.
I think that was that was a result of a question of a conversation between me and Ken, and I think we just needed to look at the spec to see what was valid for the vary header. It's really just a matter of making sure we got it right.
All right.
I guess we could clear that up in the when we get out. It's really just about getting the spec out and looking through it, and making sure we didn't get it wrong, because I think we were doing it based on our recollection rather than proper reading.
Cool. So
it's not. There's nothing beyond making sure we have the actual statement correct.
Cool. There was a must not where the not wasn't capitalized, and the must was that got. So how about I will send you a quick review. And then you can fix the couple of things, and then I'll send it off to ISG.
Yeah. That'll do. Because as I say, there's nothing awkward about the vary thing. It was just making sure we had it right.
Yep. Cool. All right. That sounds good to everybody. Fantastic. All right. Next thing on our agenda is JS Calendar and Friends. Robert, if you want to pop up here, I'll switch out the slides.
Hello, everyone. So, JS Calendar, next slide, please. So the last months with JS Calendar have been all about the scheduling model to use in JS Calendar. We found discrepancies between the JS Calendar and the iCalendar scheduling models, and had a couple of discussions, both at IETF sessions and on the mailing list, what to do about it. We had an interim at the end of September where the decision was made that we go with the JS calendar model. Now we need to make this work with iCalendar and ITIP in the sense that we obviously need to stay backward compatible with calendaring services that just speak iCalendar and the current iCalendar model, but we want to add new properties and definitions for both iCalendar and ITIP to also make the JS calendar specific scheduling model aware in iCalendar for implementations that might support both. Another thing is that on my next presentation, I'll talk about JS Contact, but this also is relevant insofar with JS Calendar, as JS Contact is very likely to get published before we land JS Calendar BIS. Obviously, we want to reuse as many common definitions between these two. So I also say here, please review JS Contact. It includes quite a number of stuff that we also want to do for JS Calendar and iCalendar conversion, namely how to convert unknown JS Calendar properties, how to convert unknown iCalendar properties and preserve them in JS Calendar. Also, localizations are a thing that we share between both. So you'll see a couple of places where they are highly relevant for JS Calendar too. And we need implementations and reviewers. The discussion the last months have been more or less between the same 4 to 5 people. It would be very great if we get more reviews from the calendaring world for JS Calendar BIS. And also, if people are coming forward with their implementations, we can do more interoperation testing before we land JS Calendar BIS. Next slide, please. So some more information on the scheduling. So as I said before, we now defined what's required for JS Calendar. The schedule ID property got added in JS Calendar BIS over JS Calendar. And that also changed the definitions of delegation and group memberships. This is now already in the latest draft. The main work currently is on figuring out how and where best to convert this information into iCalendar. At the moment, the idea would be to extend the participant component that got introduced in the event publishing RFC. That's also in the spirit that I understand that we mostly want to go forward with participant and only keep the attendee properties for backwards compatibility for scheduling. That being said, also this conversion is not fully hashed out yet. So I think we need to look at it more closely. It looks to me as there's still some heuristics and if this then that or else to that rules, and I generally do not like them for conversions because these are always the things that implementations then could get wrong. And in combination with iCalendar and the latest after we have figured out how to do that how to convert that in iCalendar, we need to look at ITIP. This hasn't started at all. We definitely need to make sure that existing ITIP format, ITIP rules still stay for backwards compatibility. And then we need to define how we can build on top of them so that we can do more scheduling, for example, using several scheduling methods, web scheduling, regular IMIP scheduling, maybe other that comes in a JS Calendar extension. Yes, and the backwards compatibility, as I said, is absolutely crucial to make this work. Next slide, please. So these are the next steps that I see. I think scheduling will keep us busy for a while. Also, the mapping document, I think I really would like to look at the structure and organization of the mapping document now that we've basically done the same exercise for JS Contact. It's at the moment, Mike and I hope, Mike, you agree with me on that, are really the bottlenecks on this. Mike has a good bunch of other RFCs to work on. I was almost completely busy in RFC work with JS Contact. So if anyone would want to join as a co-author, please let us know. I'd be very happy to share the effort with other people. So as it currently stands, I think it's realistic to aim for the summer IETF in July for Work Plus Call. That would be exactly a year after we started JS Calendar Biz, which I would think is a reasonable time frame. If not, I guess we can discuss after my presentation. Now that being said, I do know, and that's probably something that might need to get addressed in the JMAP working group actually, is that we already have JMAP specifications waiting for JS Calendar Biz. That's JMAP for calendars and JMAP for tasks. Now, I don't have a proposal how to deal with this. The differences between JS Calendar and JS Calendar Biz are not that big, but especially in terms of scheduling, that got a rework that better should be taken into consideration rather than now working on the former, or let's say current model. That's the end of my presentation for JS Calendar, so I'm happy to start any discussion about it.
I was just going to extend, getting people to help with the mapping draft. I mean, the biggest part of that, I think, is actually implementing the mapping, and simply noting what you do. I mean, it's hard to do it and get it right if you don't actually implement it, because some of the stuff we discovered came about as a result of implementing it and then running into these roadblocks that needed resolving. And we haven't done any testing. We could test between the two of us when we get something closer to working, but we really need more people to implement. And I think the rest of the stuff will just fall out of that.
Yes, I absolutely have the same opinion.
This is Ken from FastMill. So I'll address 2 points. So as far as joining the effort, I can certainly take some of the implementation load off of Robert's hands, and I can certainly also add to correcting some text. As far as the last point, I see JMAP as just a protocol and JS Calendar is the payload, so I don't think we necessarily need to hold JMAP up unless there's a change in BIS that affects the protocol, but I don't believe that's the case. Am I incorrect on that?
No, I think the fact is all the testing I'm doing for the JS Calendar conversion is over CalDAV. You don't need the protocol.
No, I was referring to Robert's last point about the JMAP RFCs referred to JS Calendar, and
I would think.
And are they blocked by our current work?
Oh, so yeah, the other way around, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think they should be blocked. Is my point.
No, I don't think they should, because I think the same thing will occur down the road. I mean, what if we get another representation? Are you going to throw JMAP away, or are you going to actually allow JMAP to transport other representations?
So maybe let me clarify. I do not think that that they might be blocked by waiting for definitions, but these specifications are defined they refer actually to JS Calendar. Now, if they get implemented and used before JS Calendar Biz lands, then we need to deal with the fact that there will be JS Calendar data out that is using the current JS Calendar scheduling model. rather than the one we are want to introduce with JS Calendar BIS, which is not totally off, but it's different.
Yeah. Joris Baum, Rodrigo. So, yeah, I see this as an issue, what you just said. Potential issue, but at least for the task spec, I can say that it's probably not going to be complete very soon. So for that spec, for the specific spec, it's right now I wouldn't see it as an issue. I would more see this as like an issue we need to track. So, you know, like make sure that JS Calendar is somehow in a final state before we publish JMap for calendars and JMap tasks, probably. And to your third point, I wanted to say that we're right now implementing the conversion spec for Nextcloud in both directions, actually.
Cool.
So between iCalendar and JS Calendar. Yeah.
That's great to hear.
I was going to say, I mean, the thought that on the last point is if you could express those requirements in more abstract terms, in terms of more like a data model rather than a specific representation, that might unblock things and also clear things up for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that if we do a change in JS Calendar BIS to the current definition, we could even make this backwards compatible with JS Calendar. And that change would be that currently now in JS Calendar BIS, so in JS Calendar, if you delegate it to another participant, you use the, let's say, artificial identifier generated in this JS Calendar object for this participant. So it could be anything, basically. In the JS Calendar BIS model, we say that you need to refer to the URI, which is the schedule ID of another participant. So if we laxen the rule in JS Calendar BIS that it can refer to a participant ID or a URI, then this could work, and participant ID can never be a URI because it doesn't, because the characters do not allow to be a well-formed URI. But I guess we can visit this on the mailing list or later in the RFC.
It, my mind does re-raise the issue of why we don't have a version number in JS Calendar.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to bring up for JS Contact, but I would be happy to talk about it now for JS Calendar too.
I suggested it a while ago and was told it wasn't necessary, but it would resolve some of these issues. And if you knew which version you were talking about, you could allow for these issues, and it wouldn't have to necessarily be backwards compatible.
Yes, incidentally, Joris and I just had a chat exactly about this also before this session. And yes, I agree that a version number that we use for handling non-backwards compatible changes is the way to go.
Most of the specifications seem to use version numbers. We had a version number in iCalendar, but of course the mistake we made there was of never changing it, so nobody pays any attention to it. Yeah.
So this might be a good argument that we look at versioning JS Calendar BIS so that we can then already start using JS Calendar, but then implementations are aware if they should upgrade or not.
Yep, I think that is where we should go.
Yeah.
I just have one question. Is it a problem that because if we say we're working group last call in July, is it a problem that we wait for JS Calendar BIS to stabilize and then move to JMap, or?
Just that we'd like to get the JMap stuff out at some point.
Okay.
But no, otherwise, waiting works just means that we won't have a spec that can be published for another 6 months for JMap. So that means delaying some milestones there.
And I'd say that given the small amount of testing that's taken place, it would make sense to wait, because it's almost certainly the case that a lot of issues are going to suddenly turn up that hadn't been thought about.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we haven't shipped this at Fastmail yet is because the spec's not out yet. So we're trying to save churning too much for our production customers, so they're still on early versions of all of this.
Yeah, so I mean, testing would certainly reduce the churn later on, because so I think we need to push for getting some testing done, and not just two of us.
Or if we don't have any testing, we can push to publish that, and then we make sure that we're going to have a GMAP bis.
Well, yeah, the trouble is people, when they see it, will just suck it up, and then we're stuck.
Yeah.
I know. Yes.
Yeah. So, Joris Baum again. I just want related to regarding the version number. I don't see. It's probably just a very simple key value thing, I would assume. So I don't see it hurting anyone, I would say, but I don't see a big need for it neither. But yeah, probably I would vote for putting it in, because probably doesn't hurt.
It's one possibility is to use the @ type that's already in there and just have it at JS Calendar 2, JS Calendar 3, etc. for the type. So there's already a place that we could do that by calling it a different thing.
The syntax doesn't matter much, but having a version that gets updated every time a change of this kind gets made allows us to automatically fire up converters and things between versions, or to simply block something we don't think is valid.
This is Ken again. So back to whether JMap should be blocked on JS Calendar BIS. Do we know, are there any other implementers out there waiting for the JMap for Calendar spec other than Fastmail? If not, then I see no problem waiting until BIS is completed and roll them out together.
Yeah, it's just Fastmail want to be able to publish it so that other people can interop with, and we don't want to publish it with a using the string when it hasn't yet been.
Right, but to Daniel's point, if we publish early and we make a drastic change in BIS that affects the protocol, now we're you know spinning out JMap BIS.
Yep. Well, I think waiting is the right answer. Don't worry, don't bother about putting yourselves in the queue, just talk.
Regarding the @ type comment, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's probably worth to mention that this should be, or probably should be used for future versions as a new JS contact or JS calendar version should use a different @ type, right? Just a one sentence thing in the spec.
Cool. So, Robert, do you have everything you need to go on here? You've got Ken's offered to help you out.
Yeah, cool.
With the writing, we've got a timeline. I think we've got an idea. Daryl, go ahead.
Daryl Miller, just one thought. I just happened to look at your media type registration that says for this media type, your type has to be equal to this value or this value or this value. So if you start putting versions in there, you technically need to go back and update the media type registration. It gets a bit messy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if we would even update the media type. We can't, because we can have more version granularity within the JSON data, then we can just put versioning for sub objects, not the complete format. But
But it does say in the media type registration that the type parameter must equal the value that is in the payload. So the wording currently says you can't. But
okay.
that wording can be changed.
Thank you. We need to
So
consider that.
that sounds like a suggestion in favor of a separate key, a separate version key, as well as the type as subtype key or something. Yeah. Seems reasonable.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so I got all I need.
Cool. So the action from that is can help to keep editing and Mike. Cool. Shall we move on to the next one, which was
Yeah,
JS
please.
Contact?
JS
Let me
Contact.
switch out the slides for you. Done.
All right, JS Contact. Next slide, please. So we are complete. We have worked the last weeks and since last IETF on getting it all in shape. I'm pretty happy with the result. So we really look forward to thorough reviews so that we can now polish this thing. Next slide, please. So summarizing a couple of changes that we did. There's a ton more, but we changed it, the time for the date and time format for anniversaries. It's now a well-defined value insofar that it's either a partial date or it's a timestamp. So you do not need to look at the semantics if it's just partial or not does not come out of the string format anymore. It's indicated by the type of the value. We also split the resources property, which really was just a container for basically any URI you can find in a vCard. We split that into more specific subtypes, as you see: media, links, crypto keys, calendars, scheduling addresses. For scheduling addresses, we use the same, we refer actually to JS Calendar to use the same scheduling methods, that being IMIP and other, as it currently stands. So so that we can define scheduling addresses compatible with JS Calendar in a JS Contact. One of the things we also did was we removed the custom time zones in a JS Contact. We introduced them when we saw that in a vCard you can have either an IANA time zone name for a time zone, or you can also just specify an offset. We initially introduced the JS Calendar time zone definitions so that one can put arbitrary time zones. For example, a time zone that's just using an UTC offset into the contact. But we figured this actually puts too much burden on implementations that just want to implement JS Contact, because they now need to implement their own time zone parsers and evaluations and stuff. And basically, we want to push people to use IANA time zones rather than fixed UTC offsets, which are even discouraged in the vCard RFC. So that's why we simplified the model. Next slide, please. Similarly, a couple of select changes that we did to the conversion document and the new vCard property and parameter definitions. We organized the conversion document now so that it should look very familiar to people being familiar with the vCard RFCs. We basically organize, it's basically now organized the same. You can have like the vCard RFC and the conversion RFC, and they are basically following the same line. So it should be straightforward to write the conversions. We also introduced the derived parameter that Mike introduced in, I think it's also event pub. I'm not sure. Anyway, the derived parameter on a property now indicates that the value of this property actually is derived by the implementation. So it's not a user-defined value, and so implementations can know that this is just kind of an ephemeral value that actually can be generated from some other information in the same card in this example. And we mainly use that for JS contact cards that define a name. So having a name defined in its several parts of the name, being the first name, last name, whatever. But in a V card, the full name property is mandatory. So now we use that to generate the full name property from a name, and we tag the derived on it, and this indicates to implementations that they should basically just ignore the full name property. We added a couple of other vcard properties that mainly were just required to map a couple of values from JS contact. For pronouns specifically, we discussed our initial proposal with a couple of LGBTIQ activist groups, and it got refined a bit, but basically the feedback was very positive. So I hope we came up with something that's future-proof. One thing we did is now that we have this label property in JS contact at a couple of places, and we now decided, even though it's not a standard property, we guide implementations to convert this to the XAB label, which Apple introduced around in the year 2000 or so in their address book. So it's been out in the wild now since more than 20 years. We expect all implementations that ever seen a vCard of an Apple client can deal with the XAB label, either by ignoring it or by actually knowing what to do with it. So it seemed like the better choice rather than introducing a new label property in vCard and run into conflicts if there is an XAB label, but also a new label type. That being said, I'm not sure if we should register the XAB label property at IANA. I don't know if that's even possible for an X property, but yeah, I guess we can decide this after this meeting. One other thing that's also relevant for JS Calendar, actually, we defined how to preserve properties that are unknown to the implementation during conversion from JS contact to vCard or the other direction. We initially had, in the previous draft, we had a couple of properties how to do that. Some of them we figured as being convenience properties for simple type values. During implementation, it turned out that implementing these convenience properties is way more work and really is not convenient at all. In contrast to just having one specific way how to write and read these special properties. And with these properties and the rest we did, we are now able to fully convert between vCard and JS contact without loss of information. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything in a vCard is kind of a first-class feature in JS contact and the other way around, but you can still preserve all the information in transit by converting back and forth over a couple of systems that might talk to each other in either that or that format. So this seemed like a good goal for us to aim at. I don't think we should aim for complete feature parity.
Cool.
Next slide, please. So that being said, we want to start working group last call. We found a couple of nits that we want to change in the document. So I guess we might want to update the document before we go into last call. One of the things we wanted to address now already came up during today's JS Calendar session, which is versioning. I say we discuss and come up with a proposal for that very soon as part of JS Contact Working Group last call, and then use the same mechanism also for JS Calendar. And so that being said, we just need to decide when to start last call. That's the end of my presentation.
Cool. Thanks, Robert. Does anyone else want to say anything on it? I think it sounds like just publish something this week and do a working group last call it straight away.
We've got the Car Connect stuff coming up, and we got Tuesday is JSTAR Day, so we could perhaps widen the audience a bit, and maybe something can come up there. But
well, that could be during working group last call, and then review and comment there.
Yep. Yeah. Just another opportunity to discuss this and ensure there's no last minute problems.
So how long typically do we have last call? Is that 2 weeks or?
Yeah.
Something?
Cool. So Daniel has kindly offered to be the shepherd for these documents. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks.
So I guess the action from this is Daniel to issue working group last call. Did you want to publish one more version first, or do you want to just issue it with the current one and make the changes during?
I think it's better that we publish a new version. The small stuff we found is clarifying definitions, and I don't think we need to go into last call with something we know which might be not as clear as we wanted it to be. So
cool. All right.
All right.
Thank you. Next up is tasks. All right, Mike.
Okay. Yep. Next, there's not much been changed, unfortunately, between this. I did make a whole bunch of changes according to the discussion we had, either the last one or the one before. Having got over the fear of components, so I did introduce this vStatus property. I rewrote the draft to use that. The issue we had around tasks was that really you want to be able to report changes in status and maintain them, and it needs to be more than just a simple status property, so that it now allows you to have a reason, which is usually intended to be something fairly structured, and you can add comments and whatever else to it to provide more detail. I got around all sorts of problems in the spec. We had this weird group parameter to try and group things together, but it didn't work very well. So the vStatus, can we move on to the next one?
Sure.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of properties we introduced. Was this reason property? It was already around as a parameter, but it worked much better as a property. It takes something like a fairly well-defined value, which is usually indicate something that can be interpreted automatically by things. Oh yeah, that was an afterthought. I think you can forget that last comment. I was wondering whether in fact summary was meant the same sort of thing, but in fact summary is just free text, and the idea was to try and make reason a little less free textish for automatic processing. Just skip on to the next one. And this is just a summary of the changes I made here. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So now we have the participant property. Just following the backwards compatibility issues with guide in the event publishing thing, we could just use participant to group stuff together to add extra information. So that got rid of a whole load of weird parameters we were attaching to the attendee. They just become regular properties, and some of those parameters we added, they were just copies of pre-existing properties, like DT stamp can be used to show when this took place, and we can just add comments and all sorts of things like that. And you can even put a vStatus inside this, so you could have a track of how the status changed for a given participant in the task. So it made things a lot simpler in the end. Oh, and I didn't spell participant right, did I? Party pants. Sounds better, actually.
Hey, I'm wearing my party pants.
Next one, please. I like that. I'm going to keep that. And there was there's been a certain amount of discussion on we had people on a bunch of calls on CalConnect, and I think there was some issues around duration and estimated duration, largely in terms of perhaps it needs to be clarified what they're both intended to mean, and that I think I see duration as being a sort of window within which you can do something, and the estimated duration is how long you think it will actually take to do it. So, you know, duration could be weeks, and the estimated duration could be 3 hours. But it also, we spent some time talking about stuff at a complete odds, because I hadn't noticed, and some people had, that 5545 had introduced a restriction on duration. It required you to have a DT start. That wasn't there before. It suddenly got added partway through the process, which I'd never noticed, and I think that needs to be removed. And I think I reintroduced another slide deck which talks about that, which I could whiz through in a minute if need be. But I think we presented that and never went any further with it. So I'd like to resolve that issue as well. Is that it, or is there something else?
You've got 2 more slides.
Keep going then. Oh yes. This I think is the JSON stuff is coming along pretty well. We probably need to ensure that we're reasonably well aligned. My inclination is not to add too much to this task specification. It deals with a bunch of specific issues, and I'd like to try and wrap this thing up. And I'm not sure whether, in fact, you know, I did say before that maybe it should contain JSON representations of what we're doing, but I'm not sure that makes an enormous amount of sense, actually. It's something we need to do going forward, but at this stage, I'd be inclined to just push this thing out fairly quickly, and then you know, suck it into the mapping stuff that we do as later on. That it seems to make more sense when you get this thing out of the way, because it's been pretty well discussed already, and I think I'd like to see it out and done. But we still need to make sure that we don't have any incompatibilities between where we're going with the JSON stuff. And the next one was, oh yeah, that's right. Yes, as I said, this is all the same thing. There've been a whole bunch of suggested things that could be added to tasks, but I think that's where we should tie that in with what we're doing with JS tasks, either with the current spec that's being worked on, or as a separate set of extensions after that comes out. It depends on, but I don't think we should tie that. We should just start adding stuff to this tasks draft. That's my feeling anyway.
Cool.
Hello. This is Hans-Jörg from Outrigger. Hey, Mike. Just trying to clarify. So this final slide you're mentioning, is this what we discussed about addressing with the JS task stuff, also stuff like issue tracking systems and these kind of things? Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, I think so. I think this the current draft provides the basis to build some things on. There's been things like talking about, you know, representing checkboxes and things of that kind.
Okay.
I think all that stuff, I think, unless it's fundamental to this extension, I'd be inclined to just push this out without addressing those, and then we address it in the context of you know, JS tasks as well. So it becomes an extension to either an extension to both, or something that is rolled into the JS tasks thing, which hasn't been around as long, and maybe, you know, depending upon people's feelings on how the timescales work there. That might be a better place to address it.
So I think my opinion that it would be, I mean, the idea how this went into, or how we added these ideas to the JS task work was basically to think about it from a portability perspective, to see like what things are similar to tasks in, you know, in groupware systems and so on. And I think I don't think that necessarily the things we add there, you know, would need to get back to iCalendar, since, you know, iCalendar is mostly used in those groupware environments, even though it might be in some cases. Yeah? So just I don't think it's necessarily the case that all of these extensions need to have a representation in iCalendar.
Yeah, and that's something we can decide on later. This is again why I think we should just get this one out, and we can make those decisions later on. Yeah. Yep.
I just wanted to make clear I understood you correctly. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Any other commentary on this? So what did you want to do as the next step here, Mike?
I think probably I need to check back through but I'm inclined to say that we should consider last call.
Cool.
Whether on.
All right. I guess I should take this one then. Do you think it's in fit state to do a last call now, or do you want to do one more revision first?
I'll give a quick read over the try and read it over the next few days, and let you know if I find anything. Because I did make a number of changes for the V status and the participant stuff. But I think it's okay, but I'd like to give a last check. But in the next few days, I'll let you know.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Next on our agenda, according to this, is your other set of slides. So let's.
Oh, there's the date time stuff. Very quickly, just to remind people of where that was with the duration and DT start.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to remind people, when somebody pointed out that. Yeah, it's that last sentence. If duration appears in to-do prop, then DT start must also appear. That was not in 2445. It was not in most of the drafts for 5545. It suddenly appeared around draft 7, and nobody knows why. Not even Bernard. It's just there, and it doesn't make any sense. It's sort of pretty much fundamental to a task is that you be able to say how long it's going to take. You don't need to say when it's going to start until you decide to actually do it. So it's and in JS Calendar we don't have that restriction. It absolutely does not make sense in terms of how tasks work. So could you just move on a bit? We'll try and get this through this fairly fast. So this is that. Yeah, that's what I just said. So if we turn on the next one, I guess that's what I just said again.
Yeah.
And there we go. And then why it matters. So I think the last slide is the question, unless that's the end of it.
There's two more.
Oh, there we are. So there's no indication why that constraint was added, and I've had a look, and it's not enforced in iCal for J, and I think Ken looked and found it wasn't enforced in libical. Is that right, Ken?
Yes, that's correct. It is not enforced.
Okay, so they're still working to the 2445 approach. So I would suggest, what's the next slide? And I think, yes. So the question was, how do we do it? Do we consider it to be an error? Bernard doesn't think of it as an error because he actually put it in there quite deliberately, but he doesn't remember why. And we never discussed it because nobody noticed until a few months ago. So I don't know how we we approach this? Do we add it to the tasks draft, which is one reason why I need to make a change over the next few days, and say we're updating 5445 to 5545, get them right, to correct this issue? Would that be a better approach? I don't think we can call it an errata.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. Daniel, what do you think?
So I'm usually more in favor of update, as errata are pretty hard to find, I think.
Yes.
But that's maybe I'm underestimating some other issues with that.
I don't think so. I'm inclined to the update approach. I think
Okay.
the reason I ran through this again is because I don't think we ever made, either we didn't make a statement or I forgot the statement. So I'm happy to add an update specifically for this issue in the tasks draft, and point out, as you say, most people will miss it as an errata. So having it as an update makes more sense.
Cool. Ken?
All right.
I initially stood up to argue for an errata, and I thought I talked to Murray about it in Philadelphia, but now I'm not so sure that I had. And that listening to Mike, it probably does make sense, given the fact that two of the bigger implementations don't enforce that restriction. So there's probably no big rush to try to file an errata and just mention it in the task draft, as you said.
Yeah, I'll add a section that probably closer to the beginning that says how this updates that particular issue, and then move from there. So there is a change I have to make before we do last call.
Yeah. No, I think I had talked to Murray about an errata, but now I think I recall that it was in regards to a V-card issue, not this particular issue.
Yeah. Does it make sense to do both, just so people are more likely to see this?
We can certainly ask the ADs what they think, present them what the issue is, and see if they can give us some guidance.
Francesca is online. Did you want to say anything, Francesca?
Work. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So yes, erratas are for bugs and errors or clarifications, but they shouldn't change the meaning of the original RFC. But that's the case. That's fine with an errata. However, if there is like people have implemented it, yeah, with that, if that creates like incompatibility, then update is better.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's why I put that question mark. It wasn't really an error in the spec. It's just that nobody knows why it was done, and there was no discussion. And I think undoing it makes sense, but it just seemed more like an update. And given that at least two of the major libraries didn't ever implement that change in the first case, we're in a pretty good position. And undoing it now probably stops people doing it. An errata might give a little more visibility, but
yeah, errata would be easier because it would just require me to press a button and approve. But I think in this case, the correct thing to do is to write an update.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'll do that then.
And just to add more to what Mike said, when nobody knows how or why it was added, I did a pretty extensive search of the mailing list traffic and of the IETF meeting notes, and I could find no mention of this having been discussed. So again,
I did actually. Yeah.
If Bernard doesn't know, then I'm not sure, why it ever got put in.
Yeah, I called Bernard, and he doesn't know.
We have 5 minutes left in this meeting, and I think we still have one more agenda item to go through. Yes, I had VPOL series and server-side subscriptions in there, as well as things to talk about, and I think possibly another thing got added. The agenda. Did you have something else?
Oh, yeah. The other things, I mean, we can just say that we intend trying to do something with VPOL and series and things, but not made any progress.
Yeah.
And the ITIP thing is probably something I'd quickly like to cover.
Cool. Go ahead then.
So this is in light of all the discussions we've been having lately over JS Calendar and the rest of it. And what I came to realize was we really could do with a better ITIP specification. It's full of it could be much shorter than it is, and it could clarify situations a lot better. It deals with each component type, each method, each thing separately. It doesn't make it clear that you can and should be sending minimized components in a lot of cases, that only send as much as you have to send. So I thought this would be a good time to consider a rewrite of ITIP, which doesn't necessarily change it much, change the actual workings of ITIP. I don't think there's anything wrong with ITIP as it stands, just that it's really hard to work your way through that spec and understand what's being said. And it also has some relevance to VPOL in that VPOL updates ITIP. And one of the biggest sections is the ITIP updates, because ITIP is such a huge spec rather. So I did start looking at what a rewritten ITIP might be like, and I started copying and pasting a lot of stuff. It would also be an opportunity perhaps to add in some direct reference to JS Calendar representations and other things, and perhaps JMAP. What were the thoughts?
Sounds good.
Yeah, this is Ken. So Mike and I discussed this previously, and I also think it definitely needs a rewrite. As Mike said, the top level focuses on components and then runs through each method for each one of those. And I think by and large, the methods are pretty consistent across all the components. So I think starting with those and just describing the differences makes more sense.
Yep.
Additionally, I'm not sure how many implementations actually support counter and decline counter. And I think that could probably be replaced with VPOL, since I think it's a much better option for what those two methods we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, it could be regarded as either deprecated or say it's simply not a good way of doing things.
Yeah, VPOL is definitely superior to those two. So maybe we deprecate them and point people at VPOL.
All right. Well then, I guess I will put a little more effort into that then. I did make a start.
All right, so I think the action here, Mike, is for you to put together a draft, and we'll do a call for adoption.
Okay. I'll do that.
Thank you. All right. And now, in theory, I think if I unshare these slides and then screen share. Here's our milestones. So submit subscription upgrade document for publication obviously needs to be updated to now. That's going to happen this week, hopefully. Tasks draft, we think, is just about ready as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Jason, sorry, yes?
There's a message in the chat about the erratas. Just wanted to note. In case you haven't noticed.
Oh yeah, thanks, Francesca. Yes, I will have a look at that. I believe that should be fine, but I'll take a glance through. Task draft good. VPOL document. Do we think December's realistic at this stage, Mike?
Possibly. I think that it updates ITIP. So my thoughts were, if we get ITIP straightened out, it would make the job of it's the biggest part left to updating VPOL is doing the ITIP updates.
All right, so we should probably bump this out till next IETF, because by the time you do a draft and then we do a call for adoption and then a last call, it's going to take a little while. We should do this after that. So I think realistically, say April 23 for that.
Yeah, and regarding VPOL, this is Ken again. Regarding VPOL, I keep promising Mike that I'll give it a read and re-implement it. And I think I'll have time between the holidays to do pet projects like this, so I'll make a concerted effort to actually both read it and re-implement it.
Yeah, I think I have a partially working VPOL as well, but I still need to do a bit of work myself.
Cool. Series and server-side subscription.
Series I need to get back to. I haven't had a chance to even look at them. So what date have we got on there?
December this year.
Oh no, it's going to have to be mid-year next year.
Mid-year next year. Cool.
I think we're using the old ASCII, so we might have to update the format of the document.
Server-side subscription.
Yes, I'll republish.
What do you think for this, Mike?
What do you think, Ken? We're still stalled on getting something out of Apple, aren't we?
It definitely works. Martin Gaida tested it way back when in like Cologne, I think, at a CalConnect, but nobody seems to be banging down the doors for this. So I don't even know if it, where we stand with it, to be perfectly honest.
Let's read it through again, and maybe next week we can talk it over somewhere and see whether it's attractive enough for any of us to want to implement it anyway.
Right. It's really a optimization for clients, but if clients aren't going to use it, then what's the point?
Well, Apple have something that they do use, and it's not quite this, and it was certainly Apple who raised it in the past. I think they're just a little more active on the calendaring side. They've become a little less active. I wouldn't be surprised if they come back to this at some point in the future when things.
Okay. I was thinking about subscription upgrade, not server-side subscription. So, let's keep moving with this and see if we can align with what's currently out there.
All right, I've put it for February, and we can always update it if that fails. But at least it gives us some rough idea. JS calendar mapping document, we've already said that it's going to be more like July. Do we want to do, that's got JS calendar bits in there as well, so that this whole set, JS calendar mapping document. Can I edit the title as well? No, I can't without creating a new one. That's okay. Near enough's good enough. Do we have any other milestones to add at this stage? Probably yes. We need to add
the ITIP thing.
Yep. Adopt a draft updating ITIP and aim for doing that December, January. Let's say January.
Say January, yeah.
Quick question for the chair regarding adoption of that. Does Mike have to have a full-blown document, or mostly just an outline of what the new table of contents is going to look like?
An outline of goals, I think, is fine.
Yeah, I'm going to do a big copy and paste operation and see how close I can get to looking. And I'm trying not to modify text that matters, obviously. So I think a copy and paste is going to work.
Right, it's pretty much guaranteed to pass the call for adoption, given that we've got most of the people on this call who are going to want to say things about it. So just a document will be fine.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else to add? We're already 4 minutes over time, so I think that's all the documents have been checked for time at least. Happy?
Yep.
Excellent. Sent. Cool. Francesca, if you could hit the button on that one when you have a moment to add the new ITIP one, I think we are done. Any other business before we run away?
Sounds we're all good. Thank
Cool.
you, Bron. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francesca. Thanks,
See you,
everyone
see you on
remote.
Sunday, Mike.
Yep. Bye then.
All right. See you, everyone. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.